You want to kick us off?
Sure. So good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is staying cool on this really hot day outside. Thank you for coming. The reason that we're holding this special meeting is because, as many of you are aware, this was, how shall we say, a very tumultuous time for District 2 parents, specifically those parents with students who had applied to high school this year. Due to the way that the Community Education Council works with our new term commencing on July 1st, we are unable to hold an official meeting of the new council until our first designated meeting pursuant to our bylaws on July 14th. Understanding and recognizing the need in our community to have parents speak up, to try to get answers, and also recognizing the need for immediate action. We tried to schedule this meeting a while ago, and we invited a number of representatives of the Department of Education to be here. Those representatives included Chancellor Porter, as well as some other individuals that I'll mention in a few minutes. I am pleased that we have Kelly McGuire, our District 2 Superintendent, who has agreed to be here. And quite frankly, I'm disappointed in the responses that we had from some of the other members who were invited but declined to attend. With that being said, I just want to make it absolutely clear to the parents of District 2. We are doing everything we can. And we have spoken as an incoming council. Many of us have spoken already, and we are doing everything that we can to try to make sure that we can be responsive as a community education council, to make sure that we can try to obtain solutions for you, information for you, and try to update you on what's going on, because we recognize that this is something that's on people's minds 24/7. We understand that families are in turmoil. People don't know whether or not they're staying in the system. People don't understand or aren't sure what their summer plans are going to be. And I can't even begin to imagine how disruptive this is in terms of people's lives. And that's why, on behalf of the District 2 Community Education Council and the incoming council, myself and Ben want to assure you that we are, again, doing everything that we can to make sure that the next council is going to be as responsive as possible and to our District 2 parents. So with that said, understanding that there, again, are parents that are just beyond themselves in terms of understanding what's going on and what they're going to do and what's happening. Before I kick it off, I just wanted to read a response that we had from our Marisol Rosales, who is our executive superintendent for Manhattan High Schools. I'm going to post it on the screen for you to see. After I post this letter, I'm just going to ask I'm going to ask Kelly McGuire if he could say a few words. And then I'd like to hear from you. I think we'd all like to hear from you. I'm also going to ask Ben Morden to speak as well before we get to Kelly. And just to hear from you as parents and tell us how this has affected you. And I just want to assure every parent here that we have to stick together, that as a group, we have to organize, and that together we can work towards finding solutions for everyone. What those solutions are, whether that involves creating additional classrooms, opening classes up at certain schools, that's an option, but we're going to talk to Kelly. We invited also Vivian Orland, the District 2 high school superintendent, who has not responded in one way or another to our invitation. To try to come up with some solutions. And I can assure you that we will, again, put the feet to the fire of those people who are not here tonight and who declined the invitation to attend. So with that being said, let me just
jump in for a sec. My Zoom has a maximum of 100 people, and there are more people trying to get into this meeting than I'm going to try right now to just increase the number of people who can come. I've done it once before, so I'm going to try to do it once more. I would also just I'm going to turn my attention to do that to let more people in. I'd also just like to say thank you to Jennifer Greenblatt from District 2, the Family Leadership Coordinator, who is also here. I know it's not the usual time for a CEC meeting, and she's found time to be here. And I know she's been in touch with so many of the families who are looking for solutions right now. So thank you to Jennifer for being here. And since CEC results weren't out at our last meeting, at our June meeting. I want to say congratulations to Len Silverman and Ben Morden, who are the top vote getters of the returning CEC members. And I think we have two new incoming members. Robin Keller and Kashik Das are with us, if I'm missing anybody else. Hello, and how are you? And Vincent and myself are outgoing. Vincent Hom and myself are outgoing members of CEC D2, but we'll definitely, help and support in any way that we can. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Len, to put up that letter, to talk about that, and I'm going to try to increase my participants. Okay.
Sure. And the fact that we have over 100 people and certainly more trying to get in right now is really indicative of the extent of the problem that we have in this district. So I'm going to share the screen right now just to show you the response from Marisol Rosales. Ms. Rosales is the executive superintendent for Manhattan. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. I apologize for the font size. And we've also invited as well Sarah Kleinhandler, who is also the head of admissions for the Department of Education. She did not respond either. I'm going to read the response. It's on the screen. Dear Leonard, thank you for reaching out and your continued dedication and advocacy for the District 2 community. Ensuring families and students are supported throughout the high school admissions process is a priority of the DOE's. We appreciate your shared commitment. The Office of Student Enrollment will work with any parents to address unique circumstances and questions. We recognize that every student has their own strengths and talents, and working with them one-on-one ensures that they get the answers to the questions. OSE, particularly Sam Daunt, has worked over the past few months with many District 2 families and will continue to do so. They can reach directly at HS enrollment at schools.nyc.gov. They will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. It is important to note that 92% of District 2 students who fully completed their high school application received an offer to a school of their choice. For those who did not, again, OSE will be happy to answer questions, counsel families, and provide other options where seats are available. I will not be attending the meeting tomorrow. I look forward to meeting with you and other members of CEC2 at your next official convening. I just want to add one other thing. We had asked those people from the DOE who advised that they could not attend, if they could send someone from their office to maybe speak with us as well, and we never got any response. I'm going to stop screen sharing. Kelly McGuire, our District 2 superintendent, not to put you on the spot, but I was wondering if you could first address the statement that 92% of District 2 students who fully completed their high school application received an offer to a school of their choice, because I'm hearing conflicting information. So could you kind of respond to that and based on your information?
Thanks, Len. And I just want to say, first of all, that I too am very appreciative of Jennifer Greenblatt and all that she has offered to our families, not just this year and through this really difficult time, but over the many years that we've all had the chance to work with her. And I also just want to thank you for the invitation tonight. It is true that I am here, and the reason why I am here is that I have been in contact almost every single day with Executive Superintendent Rosales, Sarah Kleinhandler, and many individuals from the Student Enrollment Office. They are concerned, to say the least, about the process of admissions and enrollment, and this is not an issue that is going by the wayside or being ignored in any kind of way. What is happening is that the Executive Superintendent's Office and the Enrollment Office are working very closely with families on an individual basis. There is a process by which families can receive and work on being admitted to a different school for their graduating 8th grader. And we're in the midst of that process and working on having that play out. I can go into that a little bit more. I think that some of the information is known and out there. In regard to the 92%, those are data that I got directly also from the Office of Enrollment. And So it's been widely published, and that's information that I know is out there. I'm not sure that the 92% question, though, is addresses the different concerns that are represented by folks who are on this call tonight.
Kelly, could I just
So
ask?
I can't speak specifically to that, other than those are numbers that I also have received.
Kelly, can I just stop and just ask you this, the 92%, the 8%, how many parents are we talking about? Like how many families?
Yeah, I don't know that right offhand. But that is something that I can certainly find out.
Okay, and I just want to again tell people that are out there that, you know, you're going through this right now. Another year is going to come by, and seventh grade families are going to go through this again. And unless there's a solution to the problem, this is going to continue to repeat itself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Len, if this is the time in which you want me to make to speak more to it, or if you just wanted me to answer that one question. I'm happy to follow whatever process you all want to follow.
Well, what can you? I mean, are there any solutions on the horizon? I mean, what's being done? Like, let me give an example of creating additional classes at certain schools for parents, because I know that was done in the past at certain schools especially when there were enrollment mistakes. I know that's an option that a lot of parents would appreciate if we could open up seats at additional schools. So is there any possibility of that?
So, what I can say is that, I mean, and let me first of all say that I am very empathetic to the challenges that families are facing right now. Not knowing, being frustrated with the school that your child was admitted to is one thing. And wishing that your child was admitted to a school higher on his or her list, or on his or her list. I'm certainly empathetic to that. It would be very disappointing, I think, regardless of who it is that applied. I can say that we are in the midst of a process, and we are holding to that process because we want to have some kind of predictability and some kind of structure by which we go about supporting families to help them get into to make a different choice in high school if that's what they are seeking to do. We don't want to do anything at this point that changes that process. We don't want to do anything that is unfair to families that have already followed the process and accepted their high school placement. So, this process of waitlist will continue until early to mid-August is the process and the process timeline. And after that, if families are still seeking to change the placement for their son or daughter in high school, then members of the Office of Enrollment will work individually with families to help them figure out what schools in the city still have seats available, and will really do this on kind of a case management basis, working one-on-one with families to try to help them to identify a seat that's going to be best for their son or daughter. In the meantime, I do know that many of our schools are continuing to hold open houses over the summer. And I think that those are opportunities for families to visit schools that they didn't necessarily have the opportunity to visit before, and really listen to what the experience would be like for their child at that school. But again, I recognize that this is a very personal process, and we can't, there's not a one size fits all way of working through this. And so that's why the Office of Enrollment does what they do. And that's why they will continue to work hard on behalf of the families that are seeking a different placement for their child for the fall. But we have to let parts of this process play out. And I think that we would all appreciate a process that is more accelerated. But the truth is that we do have to follow this process, and that there will be attention and support for families all the way up until the fall. And so
Kelly,
that's what I'll share.
one thing I've been hearing about, which is a really big concern, is some people have actually been moving down on the wait lists. Could you explain your understanding about why that's happening? Because it's very frustrating to a parent who might be like number 7 or have a really low number on a wait list, and then they find out a week later that all of a sudden they're number 15 or they're number 30. Why is that happening?
You know, I know that we expect shifts in the wait lists, not dramatic, but there are some shifts that occur in the wait list based on what happens with students who are enrolling above them. You know, there are students who are kind of constantly coming off and going on different wait lists. And so that does shift things around a little bit. And I know, you know, again, that would be a frustrating thing to see, but I can say that it is a part of what is happening right now as we are in this waitlist phase.
And what can parents do? I mean, is there a central location where parents can get this information? Because it sounds like in many cases you're dependent upon the parent coordinators of specific schools, and there might be different levels of involvement from one school over another. Is there a central website, a central clearinghouse, some sort of place where parents can come to get updated, you know, information on as real-time basis as possible in our district? Or can we create something? Can we have updates for parents just in terms of what's going on?
Can I jump in, Len, for a second,
Sure.
Kelly? This is something that we have, many of us have CEC members, both outgoing and incoming, have heard from parents who have tried on their own, which I think it speaks to their, you know, their willingness to find solutions, to get together in groups. Some of the parents I spoke to who had never heard of Murray Bertram or of some of the schools their kids were assigned to, they reached out to the principals of those schools and tried to set up meetings and tried to inform themselves and to try to, you know, really be positive about coming up with something. But it's really hard to create a community of people. You know, the DOE has everyone's information. So when you say we're working with families one-to-one, you know, it'd be really great. What we're trying to do this evening is to help families who are in similar situations to sort of crowdsource and groupthink their way to some good solutions. And I think I have now solved the 100-person limit for my own personal Zoom.
I was going to say, congratulations on that, though.
I used to host Zoom meetings with hundreds and hundreds of people. And when I was no longer the president of this council, I went down to 100, and I thought for my private purposes, 100 people is more than enough for Zoom meetings. But I had to quickly, just this evening, increase that. I'm actually sad to see that we have over 100 parents who on this, you know, on what should be a summer night are here at a hastily called meeting, because it means that they're really looking for answers, Kelly. And I think I was a little distracted, Len, because I was trying to do my back and Zoom changes. But when you put up that letter, if I understood Superintendent Rosales' language correctly, because I've gotten used to Department of Enrollment language, they said of the parents who listed, you know, all the possible schools. So that means 12 schools, that 92% of those families got one of their choices. What that leaves out is a family that listed 10 schools, right? You may have listed 10 schools and not gotten 10 of those schools. And I know I've had 3 kids go through the middle school process, 1 child go through the high school process. Lots of guidance counselors will tell you 10 schools is more than enough, that it's really good. But so those numbers are not, I think, actually representative of the sort of dramatic changes that happened in District 2 by changing district priority and by changing, by making our admissions process no longer tied to grades and test scores. It really threw, you know, it's dramatic change. And whether you agree with it or not, it hasn't been managed to the point where people understand what's happening or understand why their kid has been placed somewhere. So some people wanted this change, some people opposed it, but regardless, there are a lot of families who are in a real state of confusion, a lot of kids who are feeling very much like that they did what they were supposed to, and it's not that the process isn't sort of acknowledging their efforts. And I don't discount that, because I think it's really hard for kids that are going through this process, especially when you're sitting next to one of your classmates. You work just as hard, maybe even harder, and lotteries mean that it worked out great for someone and not great for somebody else. And I don't think that's that's my personal thoughts on that I don't think that's the best way to go about this. But regardless of whether you agree or disagree with the move to lottery, we have all of these families now who really are who are stuck, who have a school assignment that is not appropriate for their child, and who want to work with, I've talked to a lot of families who are flexible about where they would work and, what they would do and what they want to see happen. I know what I think we should do, and Len and Ben, tell me if you agree, is hear from some of the families, right? Because I have a 7th grader, so I'm going to be going through this exact problem next year. But I would like to hear from folks, and I'd like, Kelly, you to be able to hear from your 8th grade families.
Maud, I just have a question for Kelly. Kelly, you said the wait list is will end in early August. Why was that chosen, and why aren't the wait lists really going towards October 31st when that's when many schools determine their own budgets for the year, determine how many students that are enrolled in their school. So if enrollment is based on an October 31st date, why can't we align that and give parents still more opportunities before we go to try the one-on-one method that Office of Enrollment is planning?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question. The one thing is that, I mean, I don't know precisely what the reasoning is for the August date, but my sense of it is that the Central Enrollment Office wants to allow for enough time for shifts to occur, for families to make decisions about whether or not they're going to send their kids to school or make any other decision about their child's high school placement. So they want to give it enough time, but then also have enough time to begin to do some of this work around the individual case management of placements. It is true that the budget and register and things like that aren't captured as a snapshot until the end of October, but I anticipate that this process will continue to play out even after the first day of school. Of course, like everybody wants to be settled by the first day of school.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if some placements were made after, or some changes were made after the first day of school.
Okay, because I believe it's super critical that we extend the wait list for the one reason. I know a lot of parents are using this opportunity as an option because they may be applying now to private schools, they may be applying to charter schools, and maybe looking to move out of the city. And these lists will change. If they're extended, they will change in mid-September. And I think just this one option would enable a lot of opportunity for parents to get their students at least in the top 12 list, and be beneficial.
Yeah, I have not, this is my first time going through this as the superintendent of the district.
Sure.
And I'm only really looking at it from the standpoint of being the representative of our pre-K through 8 kids in the district. But I do wonder whether or not more accurate placements or more supportive and individualized work, whether or not doing some of that after the wait lists have closed is not more beneficial and supportive to families. I don't know for sure. And so maybe I'm just speculating on that, but
Well,
Can I add to that, Kelly? So
please.
the other piece of the reason is that high school principals need to get their classes organized and see where they are and what they have. And that was the time that they felt would be, from feedback from principals, that is what they need in order to do that. It doesn't mean that it ends once the wait list ends. You still have the opportunity to go to the Family Welcome Center or contact the Family Welcome Center and have a conversation with them to get your child placed into another school. And then that doesn't depend upon the wait list number. So if you don't have a good wait list number, you might even have a better opportunity once the wait list closes. It's just a different part of the process.
but there has to be engagement because it shouldn't be dependent upon a parent's level of advocacy on behalf of their children. Because some parents are able to advocate more than others. It should really be a universal process that that is fair and that works to make sure that every parent's needs are addressed in terms of a placement for their kids. And it's not fair if somebody's calling, like 10 times as opposed to someone who calls 3 times. Look, the bottom line is we're in this mess because of the lack of predictability. You mentioned it, because they removed the predictability of the process where it used to be if you knew based on a child's grades or student's grades, what their first choice was probably going to be, their second choice, and what the likelihood of them getting in. And the removal of District 2 priority has been an absolute disaster. And it's also very upsetting that rubrics have been changed, and that even though there were certain cases where District 2 priority could have continued this year, you have cases where some principals chose to, my understanding is, chose to eliminate it this year. So I agree with Maud's, what we were going to do before. Maud, we said we were going to do this, was going to open up to parents. Because again, we want to hear from you, and I want to assure you, you're not alone, and we are all going to work with you and do everything we can. And as you can see from the 134 people that we have here tonight, there are people who are in the same situation as you are, and we all need to get together, because when we work together, when we organize, when we are united, that's when we can create the most momentum. That's when we can be the most effective. So I guess we'll do hand raises. I see a couple.
2 hands, and Maria is one, and Kashik Kush, you're the next one.
Yeah, we're going to ask that just because we have a lot of people here. We're not going to have an official time limit. This is not an official CEC meeting. This is a committee meeting. So if you could just be respectful and just if you can wrap up your comments in 2 minutes or so, if you can. We're not going to sit there and chime a bell or cut you off if you go past that. But if you can just be respectful, I'm sure we have a lot of people who want to say things tonight.
Absolutely. I apologize for doing this, but I want to throw one thought out there, and I know some people joined a little bit late. And Kelly, this is you and I, our time in District 2 with the CEC. We're overlapping a little. We're ships passing in the night, so to speak, Kelly. Although you'll see my face at CEC meetings. But I wanted to say something to you and share with everybody here. I already shared this with some parents. I worked very closely with the previous superintendent on the New York State Integration Pilot Grant that we applied for. Our district, as well as many other districts in New York City, applied for this grant from the New York State Department of Education. And we received $2.6 million, and New York schools are fully funded according to our funding formula for the first time ever this year, prospectively, which is a great thing. We have, a lot of needs that need to be met, but we have this high watermark of funding for the first time, in addition to our district having this grant money. And the reason I mention all of that is because we passed a resolution this term in CEC 2 that I referred to as a K-12 continuum. And what we tried to talk about was the high school problem, because even though our CEC addresses K-12 or pre-K to 8 or pre-K to 8, the truth is parents don't have the luxury of popping around to different CEC to go to CCHS when your kids are in 6th grade to start preparing for high school advocacy, right? Like, a kid in a district needs a place to go to school from pre-kindergarten to 12th grade. And that it should not be a constant battle, and it should not be so difficult. And to plan for that, to have principals, middle school principals and high school principals be able to know, to have some rough sense of where kids will be when they come into the school so that they can plan for the kind of curriculum choices and teacher choices that they need. There needs to be some predictability. What we had put in that grant and what we talked about doing was partnering with high schools so that every child in District 2 had somewhere to go. I fully understand that the current DOE is heading in a different direction of saying they're trying to remove district priorities from everywhere. That is not family friendly. It is absolutely absurd to think that kids of any borough can wind up in another borough to go to high school. 14 and 15-year-old kids need to go to places that are relatively close to home. If you choose to travel 2 hours to get to a school, that is your choice. But most families and most kids want a high school that's closer to home. We know that from looking at where people. Let's see here. I don't know what I just did, but Kelly, what I wanted to say is I'm asking you to give some thought to and perhaps engage with the upcoming the NYSEP grant implementation was essentially halted because of COVID. But it is grant money. It is an idea that has germinated in our council that we need to have high schools that District 2 kids can know are, high schools that will meet the needs. We have one of the highest performing districts as measured by state tests in the city, and we have kids who are looking to continue the kind of great education they got in District 2 elementary schools and middle schools going forward. I hear and understand the argument that all schools should be good, and that is what DOE Central should be working on, but we are a District 2 body. You're the District 2 superintendent. These are District 2 children that we're talking about, so we're trying to figure out too how, as a very large community, it's one of the largest school districts, larger than many other cities in this country. So it's I'm not I'm not saying this is a small thing to do, it's a big thing, but we really need, looking forward, to create more high schools to meet the needs of the 8th grade families, that you represent right now, because you can't just go to 8th grade and then fall off a cliff. We really need to have a path for kids from K to 12. So, I wish I'd been able to say that a little bit faster, but it's important, and it's something that I'd be happy to, discuss with you further, Kelly, in terms of how we came to that in developing the grant. I'm going to go to Maria, and I'm asking you to unmute, Maria, and I'm pronouncing your name wrong, I'm sure.
Yes, thank you. Yes, correct. I'm Maria. I have a question. My situation is a very unique, I think. My son took SHSAT and he was aiming for Stuyvesant. He didn't make to Stuyvesant, but we made mistake. We didn't put any other specialized high school. He had more than enough points to go to Brooklyn Tech. So the other part for the regular school is the same as with the other parents. Now I'm asking if can someone help, maybe, solve his problem a little bit earlier, since he had more than enough points for Brooklyn Tech and go to the specialized high school. In meantime, I found a program, Discovery program, that is helping kids who scored lower than the lowest score, and they're going to have a chance to enter specialized high schools during the summer without taking a test, just spending 3 weeks in the program. I asked them, they said, your son scored higher than what is necessary for the program. I said, too high. I said, then can you allow him to go to Brooklyn Tech? If you don't allow him to follow the program and go to Stuyvesant, then allow him to go to Brooklyn Tech. They said, oh, I'm sorry, you didn't apply for that. He was accepted to the school. It is a trade school, does not have a track for going to college, doesn't follow academics. We cannot afford to pay for a private school. So you know what, at this point, if no one is there to help me, and I'm trying every day, I'm sending emails and I'm trying to find a person that will say, okay, I will talk to you and I will try to help you. And look, my problem, no, I'm sending emails to HS enrollment office, just getting responses like an automated machine, No. So I cannot find a real person and say, okay, let's look, yeah, maybe you made a mistake, but we would like to help kids who tried, who prepared for SHSCT, and you will go and will help him. So if it's not the discovery program going to Stuyvesant, he should have a chance to go to Brooklyn Tech because he has enough points.
Maria, this is an issue that other families have actually gone through. I don't know if you've talked to Jennifer Greenblatt yet, but you should call her tomorrow. If you haven't been in touch, there are, I'm gonna just ask.
Sorry, that was my husband. Is it okay if I text you, or you can give me an email so I can contact her?
Sure. If you look in the chat right now, it's jgreenblatt@schools.nyc.gov, and you can reach out to her because, as it turns out, other families have gone through similar things. So, I know it can seem very hard to find the right person to talk to at this time. But, there is other families have had issues with how they filled out that form, and you can talk to Jennifer about that. I want to go, Kush, I'm going to jump to you.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Kush, go ahead.
Hello all. First of all, yes, I'd like to thank Kelly and Jennifer for attending when others couldn't. I know this isn't entirely your problems, but I thank you for jumping in. I did want to go over a couple of the numbers that you mentioned. I think either Ben or Kelly mentioned. I heard it was mentioned that 99% of families got into one of their choices. To me, that means it went all the way down to 12th choice, though. And that I don't know what percentage of families went all the way past, got to 12 or even past 10, but that isn't, to me, getting one of your choices. That's barely being able to maintain yourself in Manhattan. And as I think Maud mentioned, or as the last speaker mentioned, some of those schools at the bottom of the list are going to be trade schools, specialized schools, not schools that are necessarily appropriate for a child's education. I heard mentioned that DOE hasn't been taking a one-size-fits-all approach, but I feel that in removing district priority, that is exactly what they did right off the bat. On top of, you say, going back to the 99% of families that got their top choices, at the middle school event, I heard that something like 82% got one of their top 3. I'm guessing that stat does not look so good for high school, or else it would have been touted already. Because anecdotally, I could tell that 99% doesn't match up well with what we're hearing anecdotally from families that in our wide networks. At PS 276, one of the schools that I think I was elected from, I heard 20 families got no one on their list. I believe they have a graduating class of 100. We knew that before this even happened, 2020 to, I think this came, Jennifer, you mentioned this, 20 to 25% of the families had left District 2. A lot of that was because of COVID. A lot of it was in anticipation of a middle school and high school mess that we're seeing right now. Anecdotally, I'm hearing even more and more families telling me every day almost that they're going to another farewell event for people leaving New York City. So this 25% of the families that left District 2, I'm expecting another 10% drop after this. So which brings me to my main point. I want to read, Maud and Ben and I think Len issued their disappointment that the high school superintendent could attend, and that Marisol Rosales could attend. I'd like to reiterate that disappointment, particularly, and I know parents want strong leadership instead of blame, but I really think high school superintendent Vivian should be here to hear the parents' outrage. Because also anecdotally, it's mentioned in the chat a few times that many of the high schools have voluntarily chosen to get rid of their priority, whether it be district or borough. It's not quite voluntary when the high school superintendent reaches out to SLTs individually and requests that they remove priority, district and borough. This is something that the superintendent should be here and listen to. The chancellor should be here and listen to. When right off at the very beginning, District 2, we knew that there was a problem with District 2. It's not a matter of District 2 being the wealthy or influential district. It has to do with the fact that there are only 2/3 amount of seats, high school seats, in our district for kids who are graduating from our district. And that is before we remove priority. I understand this is probably all done in the name of equity, but at some point, just raw numbers and logic have to rule, or else you'll never get the predictability that you're speaking of. I hope I made myself eloquently enough, but.
Kush, you make all good points. I want to go to one of our 8th grade parents who I know has been in touch with other parents. Jung Min, do you want to jump in?
Hi there. Hi there. Thanks, Maud. I have been in touch with other parents, and I am the outgoing president of Lab High School, and I'm a member of the Manhattan High School's President's Council. And Dr. Jackie Cody, who is the president of the Manhattan High School's President's Council, asked me to attend on her behalf today to talk about the need for engagement of all stakeholders across the city, including parents, of course, students, administrators, teachers, the union, all different stakeholders to create a citywide leadership team. I think what's the outcome of this enrollment process is really that those stakeholders were not brought together to have a voice in the policy that got foisted upon us. And one of the goals of the Manhattan High School President's Council is the creation of a citywide leadership team, which is a similar structure to what was just referred to, the school leadership team. So if parents had been part of the decision-making process, aside from, open forums and this and that, but actually sitting at the table and being part of the policy-making process, then we would not be in the situation that we are in. The situation we are in is actually more than just making seats at District 2 high schools. Because as a PA president of Lab High School, I know that Lab changed its diversity and admissions percentage. So it used to be something between 20 and 30%, and it went up to 60 to 70%, 66%. What that means is that the student body is no longer the student body it used to be. So, I know a lot of parents are clamoring for a seat at those sought after schools, but I just want to let you know that those schools are no longer the schools that you identify as being whatever people define as good, mainly because the students are different now, will be different, and will be gradually more and more a different sort of kid, which is more free and reduced lunch kids and also citywide kids. So just for the parents who are on this call, really be aware of that. You're banging on a door to some place that doesn't exist anymore. Lab is no longer the school it was, likewise the other schools. All those schools that have changed their diversity and admissions percentage are no longer the schools that they were this past year. Okay, so that's really important for everyone to wrap their mind around, because wherever they were placed, or wherever you're trying to seek a spot at is not what was last year. Okay, so that is in the past. And that is like the seismic shift that has occurred that I don't know if is getting as much attention, because it's beyond just not getting a seat at year 12. It's actually, there are no seats that used to be of those schools that used to be, because those schools at a fundamental level have changed. I advocate for community-based schools, like Maud said, community-based schools rather than an outdated, I feel, antiquated model of theme-based schools. I think that, we have, each of us, have experienced the history, our history of the DOE. Some of us, it's 16, 12, 15 years, 15, I have a 11th grader now. And this is just, our times reflect a certain culture of what we are looking for. And the way schools are labeled and marketed reflects a past time where everything was specialized, everything was themed. And there needs to be a new paradigm that is about community-based, that is about certain academic goals, and that is about kids having certain goals. So just for parents to really think about what makes a good school for them and to seek that out. And if you can collaborate with other parents, like-minded parents, to push the principals at the schools that you are placed at to achieve those common goals. Right now, you know, as an 8th grade parent, that is the solution. That is the only solution that is going to work for my kid, for my 8th grader. And it's on the other parents of younger kids to bring about more schools, more zoned Manhattan high schools, because there are none. And there are, let me tell you, there are zoned high schools for other boroughs.
Yes.
And it is beyond unacceptable that there are 0 zoned high schools for Manhattan. So that needs to be, you know, I tried to start a Manhattan zoned high school. I have a Gmail account that's about that, but you know, realistically, that's not going to happen for September. But it's on you guys who are younger, parents of younger kids, to make zone high schools happen that are community based and that are achieving the academic standards that you're looking for. The problem of systemic discrimination has not been solved. So all of this enrollment change is trying to address some kind of systemic racism, right? That's the undercurrent that I've been hearing. Well, there is still systemic discrimination. Now it's systemic discrimination against District 2 parents, in my opinion. So we cannot create enrollment rubrics and systems that shut large groups of people, kids, out just because of where they live and because they make too much money. Okay, so that's fundamentally whatever enrollment tried to do this year. Systemic what? Systemic racism against who? I don't really know, right? They're trying to unwind that historic ill. Well, that historic ill is just replaced by a new historic ill, which is people who are now, like us, disenfranchised from basic education. And fortunately for me, I feel like I've been placed at a high school, where there's room for us to have a voice and to make change within that school, to make that high school that was not on my list better than it was before. And the number one reason that high school is better than it was is because my kid's going there. That's the number one reason, because my kid is going there and there are kids who are like my kid who are going there. And that's what's going to make that school a great school, because parents like me, kids like my kid, they're going to make those schools better. And so we need to have a change of how we think about schools. It's not about the building, and it's not about last year's test scores. It's about your kid and what your kid brings to the table, and is what you as a parent bring to the table, and the amount of advocacy, pushing, fighting that you can do as a parent to make that happen. And yes, unfortunately, it really sucks, but that's kind of the hard work we have to do. And hopefully we can have some partnership with the DOE, with good people like Kelly McGuire that I had the pleasure of being a parent with. Hopefully there are good people still within the DOE who can hear us, who can help us, and who can empower us to bring about that change, because from the top down, the systemic aspect of this has absolutely not been solved, okay? So those are my points for tonight. Oh, FYI, the SLT of Lab certainly did not endorse this enrollment policy, and I vehemently opposed any endorsement of this policy as an SLT member, and there was certainly no consensus about it. And I vehemently also made it clear to the superintendent of Manhattan High Schools that any messing with SLTs to rubber stamp this policy was wrong and is not okay. And I heard cheering when the enrollment policy was announced. I heard cheering from certain members of the DOE. And that to me, that was cruel to me as a parent, as an 8th grade parent. So SLTs of these sought after high schools, they did not endorse it. The open letters that were put out in December, those are by individuals, school leaders. And, the school leadership team of every school needs to have some power, needs to have some advocacy power. And those school leadership teams were not consulted by those high schools. Okay, thank you so much.
I just want to also just add to one thing that you said. Again, the decisions that are being made at the high school level are being made by people also whose students are already in those schools. And I think that's something that really needs to be brought home. And it's not fair that decisions are being made without parent engagement at the high school level that are going to affect students who are in 6th grade and 5th grade and 4th grade and 3rd grade and 2nd grade, and they have no impact whatsoever on that, on those decisions that are being made. So I appreciate your comments. It's very well noted, and thank you for telling us.
I'm gonna jump to David and Dan next as the next 2 speakers whose hands I see, and I'll check for the other hands. I just want to say, Jungmin, I just want to comment because what you said is so incredibly important, and it's what I tried throughout last term in the CEC resolution after resolution to talk about, because the drumbeat has been equity and to solve for various kinds of racism by getting rid, by imposing the changes that we've had this year. And look, for some kids, it worked out great. They got the school they wanted. As you correctly point out, it's no longer the school they thought they were getting because it has a different incoming class, which will require different academic changes within the school. Ultimately, if we listen to families, people want schools that meet their academic needs and that are community-based, the 2 things that you pointed out, Jungmin, and that to me is something that we can work towards on a district level, right? Because I don't want my kids to go to school in Staten Island, which happens to have zoned high schools, by the way, as you correctly point out, because it's too far away and too much travel and so the citywide high school plan, which was brought in, Jennifer and Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, but brought in under Bloomberg as part of the ever-changing, plans to make things more fair, make things better, and improve. It doesn't work. We've seen all these endless changes. Having some local zoned high schools where a superintendent, and by the way, from the state, superintendents usually do cover kids from, a community school district all the way through. This thing of having a separate system for high schools is a New York City thing. In the rest of the state, the New York State Department of Education puts by law, we have superintendents in our districts who normally are in charge of kids from K through 12. So the best way for parents to do what Jungmin is saying we should do, and I agree with her 1000%, is to be able to have a seat at the table so that you're advocating for your kids for a system that works from K through 12. Because ultimately, we have parents like Jungmin who can be PTA leaders and who can say with some confidence, I will help to make the school that may not be a great school now, but my kid is going there and I will help to make it. She has the talent, the knowledge, the know-how, the willingness to step in to do that. But some parents simply don't have the ability, the time, and the Department of Education should not put it on the shoulders of parents to make failing schools better, because with a $34 billion budget and growing, we should all be able to send our kids to a school that's great already. Sorry for the soapbox, but Jungmin, I agree with you so much, and I think you hit upon those points so well and so clearly. So David, I'm going to go to you.
First of all, thank you. And I just want to say that I barely heard about this. This just flashed out of my email. Literally, you can see how I'm dressed from exercising. So I'm going to be far less eloquent than Jungmin, and I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. I'm a Stuyvesant grad. My daughter was at ESMS, which we really liked. She did not get into any of her top choices. She, in the traditional admissions process, would have most likely gotten into Eleanor Roosevelt or one of the schools. She got into her 9th ranked choice. The watering down of the standards is really unacceptable. And I understand the social engineering that's going on, and I respect trying to change some of the demographics of the schools, but parents were caught totally flat-footed. And you know, we missed the private school window, and, you know, my ex-wife and I did not want to do that. We had committed to doing public school, but now, candidly, we are very much looking at other options. And, you know, this was done after the private school deadlines. This was done under the cover of the pandemic. And I don't believe there was any consensus from parents. And I just want to say that, you know, as somebody who went to one of the select schools and took the test, to see all these schools get watered down and have to explain to my daughter, I'm sorry, you know, you did great. You were above the thresholds, but, you know, these are the cards you've been dealt and you got to play the hand you've been dealt. That was a life lesson I would have rather given 9 years and not to my 14-year-old. You know, I'm really speechless about this whole process, and that the DOE was really able to get away with this. And I don't understand. I understand if you want to save seats for other students, but like, why reduce the cutoff? It should have stayed the same. It should have been like, okay, maybe you'd get rid of the locale preference, which I'm not in favor of, but it's still 92 across the board, and whoever can make that threshold is included. But this is just the worst. And I'll say the other thing that people might not want to say is that a lot of people who have choices are going to leave. And it's not because they want to leave, it's because they're compelled to leave. And as many of you know, people are willing to overspend on their children's education because they value it so highly. So I just want to say, and again, I'm not as eloquent as Jung Min, that I am just so disappointed. And it was very disheartening to explain to my daughter how the new dynamic has really taken opportunities away from her.
David, thank you. And I know you said that we've had a lot of trouble getting this meeting calendared. And so we had to put a lot of effort, and we got it out there and tried to, through channels, just get as many people know as possible. Someone put in the chat to me directly if this will be posted. It is a committee meeting, and we will post it on the CEC D2 website. I won't say when because Ben has to do that work, not me. So Ben Morden does a lot of great work to keep our recordings available. But this is a committee meeting, so it will get posted, and so people will have access to it. For those of you who may have missed the beginning, why don't we go to Dan?
By the way, just thank you for arranging it. It wasn't a complaint. I just
no. I just wanted to let you know. But thank you, and you look great. Don't worry about the exercise.
Just one point, David. The next Community Education Council, which starts tomorrow, but our first meeting is July 14th. We're going to keep this process going, and as a council, we will still be representing parents who've been impacted by this. So this doesn't end tonight. This really begins tonight, where we follow up and we learn what's happening, and we follow up with the DOE. So
I'm going to go to
not alone.
One thing I will say about is that while it's in my head, because the thoughts can be fleeting, I think there are a couple, when we leave here, we do want a couple of action steps. And one will be around current 8th grade families, Kelly and Jennifer, how the CEC going forward can communicate about wait lists, as Ben Morden mentioned, going forward, how to help families get information that currently want to try to be in a different school. And then also how to support families like Jung Min, who's saying, we're going to go to a school that we're going to work on to improve, like how we can do, Kelly, how we can work with, because Jung Min will be in a school that District 2 families like mine, who will have an 8th grader next year, might not normally look at, how we can facilitate that process to help people know what's going on in that school and create a pipeline and create, help support those school leaders and principals to get additional funding for staff so that they can have an AP class that they don't currently have, or that kind of thing. Like figuring out what is the best way to create that kind of support is an additional step that I think we need to do. And then ultimately, in the more long term, is what Jung Min and I both spoke about in terms of really solving more long term for sort of a K through 12 path for kids within a district. So those are what I would think would be sort of the action items that we need to go. And I'm going to go to Dan.
Yeah, sorry I can't join by video. Thanks for putting this together, Maude. My name's Dan Anziska. I'm the president of the SLT at PS6, which is a District 2 school. Congratulations, Kelly, on becoming the District 2 superintendent. Jennifer, we've met before. I get it. It's hard to hear this feedback, which I'm sure is not surprising to you, as well as to the broader DOE, though it sounds to me like the broader DOE is not exactly being responsive. But in addition to Maud's ideas about coming up with specific ways to help the families of 8th graders, and I have some child who just graduated from Salk, which was a specialized middle school in District 2 and a wonderful one at that. In addition to finding specific ways to help children at these historically lower performing schools and give them the appropriate resources to help, I just want to point to, notwithstanding the best efforts by the Board of Elections, there will end up being a mayor at some point in January of 22. And that mayor will be one of 2 people at this point, both of whom believe in competition for resources, both of whom are longtime advocates of charter schools and other uses of public resources. And I would implore you to use available data and this type of engagement by parents to really get empirical, figure out how many kids you're losing, how many are leaving the city, how many are moving to independent schools like my incoming 9th grader is moving to. There are plenty of them. And to use that data and use the fact that people are voting with their feet right now to really leverage, engage, and have an open dialogue with the DOE, because the de Blasio years are coming to an end, and there is going to be open discourse by the next administration. And I've spoken with both of those mayoral candidates about this. And personally, most of us guys are agnostic. Here's the good news. People like Maud and myself and all the people on this call tonight, we just want to get good educations for our children. We're agnostic about the platform. So we could be your biggest supporters, or we could look for alternative platforms. But in the end, like everyone, we want what's best for our children. And the best path forward, I believe, will be active engagement and working together to make sure that our kids have appropriate schools for high school. But I'm telling you right now, if the door is shut and we're called names for our advocacy, there are going to be other pathways that are going to be leveraged at this point. And a lot of us have the resources and ability to do that, and the relationships and contacts to do that. So I'm coming here in the spirit of collegiality. I think we need to work together, but I think it needs to be a two-way street, and we need to be listened to and respected. And I think we can implement some of these great ideas that Maud has been putting forward for the past few years, but we need real partners to do that. And I think you guys are the right people because you're in District 2 and you get it and you're on the ground. So with that, I probably spoke too long, but I appreciate you coming and lending an ear today. But we're reaching the olive branch out. Let's work as partners here. But in the end, we're going to figure out a way to get our kids educated, and they can't just be ignored.
You know, I just wanted to follow up one of the things that you said. We have, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but we have Audrey Tannen from Liz Kruger's office. We have a number of representatives, and there are some changes happening now. There are elections, but we also have to engage our elected officials in this. I know we just finished the election cycle, but it's important for you as parents. One of the things that you can do is just call your local representative, even if they're leaving, even if they're term limited, and just call and just express your outrage and your concern. And also contact the new representatives if there's a new person coming in. and reach out to their office to let them know that these are issues that we care about. That's one thing that we can do. So it does take a village, and that's one resource that parents really need to take advantage of, and at least push our elected officials to recognize and acknowledge that education is an issue in our district. And I think, it kind of gets overshadowed with, we've been hearing this last election cycle about crime and things along those levels. But I'm certainly for the 100+ people that are here tonight, education is the #1 issue. And I think that really needs to be conveyed to our elected officials.
I'm gonna, I don't see any other hands, but I'm gonna say that Dan, I see Deborah's hand, I'll go to her. I'll just say that Dan, the anecdotal evidence of people leaving is overwhelming, and it's not just folks who have the resources or the connections. My husband came home from getting his hair cut and told me his barber had just taken his son, who had gotten a plate. His barber's daughter goes to Beacon, and his barber's son didn't get one of 12 choices he put on his list. And so he got him into parochial school. This is not someone who's wealthy, and he cuts hair for a living. And he was, really shocked by how the process worked.
I apologize, Maude, if I misspoke.
No.
Plenty of people I know, plenty of people from all walks of life.
Yes.
Have done incredible things already in anticipation of all this. And it isn't a wealth thing. What I'm talking about in terms of resources and connections, I'm talking about the relationships.
Right.
With the income.
Dan,
Yeah.
I wasn't disagreeing with you, because the truth is, for me, it is a big equity thing. If you can afford to send your kid to private school and you get a terrible choice that doesn't meet your kid's needs, you have that option. And for the families who can't afford to send their kids to private school, it's a much harder road to try to secure that education that you're looking for. So you're 100% right to say that some people have more open doors than others. I'm just saying that the DOE severely underestimates how many people are leaving if they think it's just a couple of spoiled rich people who are leaving the system. It's not. And that exodus hurts all of our schools, and it hurts our school community. And it's something that I wish I could see them being more concerned about. But Dan, I'm going to
let it does, but they don't care. I'm sorry, but they don't care, because if they cared, something would have been done a long time ago.
Dan,
I wouldn't have gotten to this situation.
I don't know if it's care. This is a huge system. So I'm sensitive, and I was born and raised in New York City. I'm sensitive, and the DOE and public schools have been through a lot. But what I'm saying is education, kind of knowledge, information, and advocacy by parents has also greatly matured in the past 20 to 30 years. And there are great ways to collaborate, but it's not, you can simply shut a large cohort of people down and say, this is how things are, too bad. Because just look all over this country, there are many, many other solutions that have been developed using public resources. So I'm putting that out there for the DOE and the group, that we want to collaborate. But, and I do think they care, but this is a way to kind of incentivize caring, right?
Yes, I like that, incentivize caring. I'm going to go to Deborah and Todd next, because that's how I saw your hands. Deborah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for hosting this meeting, and thank you to everyone for your participation. I reached out to the DOE. I've reached out in so many different ways. I've reached out to all of my local politicians as well, and several are working on my behalf now, because I just think it's unfair that my son, who did everything he needed to do to get into the best school in his neighborhood 5 minutes away, he had everything he needed to do because he had seen his sister go through this process 2 years ago. So he really never missed a day of school, did everything he could possibly do, and then to have the standards change. And why underestimate the free lunch kids? Why can't they achieve the 90 or 92 percentile to get into these schools? Why lower the bar? Because my son just graduated Eastside Middle, and why lower the bar to 80 or 85 when, because I know at Eastside Middle, in 85, you get an email home that your kid needs to work a little harder. And so my child worked very, very hard to achieve his grades and not to get one of his 12 choices. And then when I write emails to the DOE, I wrote to Kristen O'Neill, who's the head of high school admissions, and she wrote back to me, well, the reason your son did not get any of his 12 choices is because you only put down screen schools. Now, I would only consider screen schools for my son because he's been through an accelerated program, and he never has had any difficulty. He doesn't need a tutor. He's challenged. So why would I choose an on-screen school for my kid? And then she gives me a list of schools that have room for him that are trade schools. And he was put in a school where only 36% of the kids qualify for CUNY. Why is that appropriate for a kid who has an A+ average? I don't understand that. So, and then his waitlist numbers keep going in the wrong direction. Because I was told, wait for the waitlist to open. And his numbers keep jumping higher and higher. They're not going in the right direction. Are these really called waitlists? There should be another term for them. Does anyone have another term for this? Because this is not a true wait list. If your number jumps from 55 to 58 to 59, I tune in daily and it's really disheartening. And every one of my son's friends is going to parochial school or private school, or if they were lucky to get into specialized school. My son got sick during the specialized test, so he didn't qualify. No one's going to let him take it over, even though he got sick in the middle of the test and couldn't complete it. So why is that fair? Just looking at the percentages, I don't believe 92% of the District 2 kids got a school of their choices, because every one of my son's friends is going to parochial, private, or leaving the city, and 2 of them with IEPs got into Eleanor Roosevelt. And that's all of my son's friends, the boys at Eastside Middle School. So please, I want the stats out, and there's no one who can speak to me. No one can give me the answers, and all they can say is, well, that's too bad because you only chose screen schools. My son did everything he needed to do. Why change the standards in the middle of a crisis, a pandemic? So thank you for your attention.
Deborah, I wish we had answers to, but you raise all the right questions, and we don't have answers, but we are going to, I know the incoming CEC is going to keep looking for some of those answers. Todd, we're gonna go to you.
Hey, thank you. My name is Todd Hilmerich. I've worked with some of you in the past. I was previously the chair of SLT at an elementary school here in District 2 for 6 or 7 years, and for one of the middle schools for 2 years. Agree with a lot of what was said. My son, by the way, also, Deborah shares the same situation. Scored well, good grades, did not get into one of his 12 schools. Had to give this same discussion when he said to me, so Dad, the work I've done since kindergarten means nothing. And I had to say, unfortunately, it means nothing. We did see the writing on the wall, did apply to private school. And after being an advocate for city schools for so many years, we're now leaving the city schools. And while my daughter will remain, because she already is in high school, my son will take out of DOE schools. That's disappointing. Didn't want to go over what was already talked about. I did want to point out something that I haven't heard yet, which I think is really critical for the success as well as we look at the long-term picture. And that is just ensuring that the elementary schools, we're fortunate here in District 2 to have great elementary schools. Other districts, not quite as strong. And I think that's just important that we keep the focus on that as well, so that we're feeding well-educated students into middle schools and then up into high schools. A lot of the discussion I've seen has been focused on the upper grades with the some of the the work that needs to be done in the elementary schools not being discussed. So I just wanted to mention that as well as part of the long-term plan.
Thank you, Todd. Yes, I think that makes sense with regard to the elementary schools. Chen, we can go to you. Chen, by the way, for those of you who don't know, joined us. Chen is an incoming CEC member.
Hello, everyone. Hi, thank you. I'm speaking as a parent, and I'm a outgoing PTA co-president at PS 111. But I just want to reflect on a few things. I think thank you for all the parents speaking out for their own children, for District 2 who are in District 2 who do not have a good choice. I want to speak about the idea of access to good schools to get a great education. I think every child should have access to a great education, a good school, no matter where he or she lives. This includes whether they live, in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and also Manhattan. That if you're a child in the Bronx without access to gifted and talented schools programs, you should have access to them in Manhattan, which my children who are when they were in, my daughter's still in the G&T program, they have had classmates commuting from the Bronx, from Queens, from Brooklyn, because they lacked the programs, they lacked access in their home districts. So they had to travel, and I'm glad they had that access. But it makes me ask, why did they have to travel in the first place? Why? So now we open up District 2 to everybody who wants a great education. Yes, District 2 has excellent schools, but I would say that they have excellent students who perform and who work very hard, who have a lot of focus. And there are high-performing, hardworking students outside of Manhattan as well. So they should have access to excellent schools in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, in Queens, and Staten Island, as do children in Manhattan, where they want to go. So now, how do you make that all happen? Well, you want to build schools that are high-performing for the kids who are hardworking in every borough, in every district. Help support them, provide the gifted and talented programs, provide the accelerated programs, provide the specialized high schools in their own districts. Support them, because why would you force kids to undergo so much hardship to travel out of borough? And it's the same right that District 2 kids have to an excellent education in their own district, in their own borough. Let's apply that equally. Let's apply that towards academic excellence as well. Support them in pursuing that. Now, there are a lot of kids who are not performing, or for whatever reasons, could be family, it could be personal choice, the environmental, or just whatever it is, right? And lack of access. Let's fix those. Let's address those. But shuffling them around and say, "Oh, we've done our job," and putting kids who are not performing well, and because they have a perception, you taught them that, "Oh, you'll do great once you get into the school," but you have not changed any support. You have not changed any behavioral side of the actual studying and the homework and attention, and having the access to tutoring, after-school programs, even family support, free after school for elementary. If you don't provide those, you're just shuffling the problem, which is exactly what will happen when we see kids turning up in District 2 who are not the same preparation, who have not this great. There will be kids who are performing, and that's great. But I think when you randomize it, you don't have a chance of who those would be. But so my point is, I support giving every child access to a great education, giving the great support wherever they are, without putting them through the hardship of travel out of borough. But the DOE isn't doing that. And instead of doing that, they just say, let's open up all the schools in where it's high performing, and then tell them it's magic that when they come here, when they go through 2 hours of commute time, when they send their daughters and sons out of borough, 2 hours on the subway, exposure to whatever crime that's now happening, that they will magically become great students. No. And as educators, you should be ashamed to think that. Educators should be the last to say that. The educators should be the first to say, we need to support them where they are, provide them the support to support however high, whatever they can go where they are, so they don't have the hardship. You think about, children in shelters, they already have a tough life. They have to travel anywhere. Their families might be moving around. They have to commute everywhere. This is what you're going to put more kids to. Even a harder life. Why don't you make it easier for them so they can go to school near where they live and have a chance at a great education, fully supported, with whatever they need, and stop this charade, this farce. Thank you.
Jen, I agree with you 100%. I can tell you that in many respects, District 2 is a victim of our own success. That success, by the way, comes with community engagement. It comes through the hard work of people such as Jennifer Greenblatt, who was instrumental back in the day of getting schools created like Eleanor Roosevelt High School. It's not by accident that District 2 has such great schools. I can tell you, serving as the District 2 representative on the Chancellor's Parent Advisory Council, other schools look to District 2 and they see District 2 to some extent as being privileged and hoarding resources. It's not an accident that these schools are as successful as they are. It's a testament to the hardworking students that we have. It's a testament to the work of our students, of our parents, of the people in our schools, of our administrators, and that model needs to be replicated outside the district. I agree with you 100%. This is not the solution to the problem. And unfortunately, it's our District 2 students that are bearing the brunt of this because they're the ones who are suffering. And they're the ones who, as Todd said, you have to go tell our kids, hey, sorry, all that hard work doesn't really matter, doesn't make a difference. So if you talk about equity, that is about as unequitable as it possibly can get. And that's wrong. That's just wrong. So, again, we're here to try to find solutions. I know the topic that's on everyone's mind again tonight is what can we do for the students who did not get their schools. Again, I'll throw this out because I know we had about 54 or so, 60 parents that weren't able to attend the first part of our meeting because of the limitation of 100 people at the Zoom meeting. But, I'll ask again, can we create, is one of the options creating more seats at schools in addition to making sure that wait lists are extended? What can we do? Because we don't want to lose any more parents, and parents, not everyone can afford to send their child to parochial school or have that option. So, I'll bat it around for all of us, but we, again, want you to know, and Jen knows this, and all of the incoming members of our council, we are here for you, and we will do whatever is necessary to try to make sure that your voices are heard, but we have to all do this together. We're all in this together, and we need your support.
I'm gonna go. I think we had on the Zoom schedule 7:30 to 6:30 to 8:30, but I'm hoping to wrap this up closer to 8 o'clock, guys. That only gives us 6 minutes because I know people have their evenings to go on with. But I'm gonna say I'm gonna go to Maria, but I know she's a second-time speaker. But Kelly, I am gonna just try to say more concisely than I said before, that sort of the 3 action items that I see are creating targeted supports for parents who right now don't yet have a school placement that they are, that works for them at all. Trying to get parents off wait lists, help parents access the Family Welcome Center. And the second part is targeted support for families who are going to go to a school that traditionally District 2 school students haven't gone to, and find ways to help make those schools a success for the new incoming class of students. And then long term, we have to create some district zoned high schools because as so many of you have said, what drives these constant changes is an equity conversation. And I think what has become clear now is we're not improving, we're not meeting the metrics, the magic metrics that you never really know what they are, of improving schools the way some of the equity advocates want to improve. But what we are doing is chasing families out of the Department of Education. And what we should do instead is create community schools, zone schools that have a focus on the academic needs of the particular district, because that is a concrete, manageable universe of students. And then you can have a professional relationship between middle school principals and high school principals, the way District 2 currently has working relationships between principals at elementary schools and principals at middle school. Kelly, you were an LMC principal in middle school. When you had kids coming to you from the elementary schools of District 2, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Kelly, but I think it's fair to say you had some known quantities. You knew what you were getting roughly when you knew you were getting X number of students from, a PS41 or from, PS42, PS1. You have a sense of what those elementary school levels were like, how those kids were faring and what they were doing, and some sense of, what you could anticipate. Whereas when you have a much broader, range of students to get it, the planning is harder and it's more difficult. And I've heard from principals again and again that say you need some predictability in order to even plan your classes and know what your incoming is. So that longer term plan, Kelly, is obviously not wholly on your shoulders because it's with the executive superintendent and with high school superintendents, but it is what the students of District 2, the families that you do work with, the K through 8 families really need. So that third piece is the longer term piece. But I think it's what, it's become incredibly clear it's what we need to work on. Maria, you put your hand down, but if you want it, you had your hand up for a while. If you wanted to say something else, we'll go to you.
Yes, this is not personal, it's just a general question. I support whatever Chen said, and I'm just have a question. Is anyone benefiting from this? Why we're living in this mess, and are we following the demographics of the city? If you're following the demographics of the city, honestly, I will understand that why we're doing this, because that's the reality. But are in the good schools still the demographics of the city, or just some group of kids suffering for this? Just that. But whatever Chen said, I am okay with that. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Leah next because she hasn't spoken before, but I saw something in the chat from someone who said they want to remain on the mailing list, which is a good reminder. The Community Education Council, CEC D2.net, you can sign up to be on that mailing list, and any CEC D2 meetings that we will have. Ben, would you stick that in the chat, the CEC D2 website? Just many of you here are already on that list, but if you're not, please sign up to that on CEC D2, because then you will get notices for all our regular monthly meetings, but also any specific high school specific meetings. Leah, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, yeah, I just wanted to add that, thanks to the list of action items, I really think we need an action item for those of us with children who are entering the 8th grade this year, okay? We as parents need transparency on the process that we're going to experience as soon as possible. Whether we agree with it, we don't agree with it, we need to understand it so that we are not confused. So I would love if we could have an action item around that, and if you could even help us figure out who we need to advocate with. I don't know, right? I email the chancellor all the time, but who else do we need to be advocating with such that this transparency is provided to us ASAP and not at the last minute? I'd love if we could focus on that as well.
And Leah, that's something that we're going to also undertake with the new council. As you know, you may not have been here in the beginning, but we invited the members of the DOE. Kelly McGuire was the only one who was kind enough to appear here tonight. It is about making sure the right people that we're in front of the right people. So we're going to be working on that. So your point is very well taken.
Great, thanks. And yes, I wasn't able to get on, and I wouldn't have even known about this meeting had I not gotten an email from Eastside Middle School where my daughter just got in. So very grateful to have heard about it. And the more communication we can do about this to the community, how we can engage, really the better.
And Leah, we talked about this also before you may have come on, but it's up to, this is a problem that is going to affect 8th grade parents, 7th grade parents, 6th grade parents. So if you're in the 3rd grade, most of the time people are thinking, oh, I don't have to worry about this. Changes in rubrics doesn't affect me. What you do, and you need to get it out to your community, to other people. Maybe someone who's as a parent of a 1st grader, but they need to be engaged, and they need to be involved now, not like 5 years from now, not when the decisions impact them, because I'm sure there are a lot of parents at this meeting tonight that probably wish they had been more engaged earlier and understood the changes that were being made, often behind the scenes without any communication to them. And that's what we need to make sure doesn't happen again in the future.
I would also like to add that with the suspension of government of the emergency actions regarding has changed open meeting laws. And so originally today's meeting was supposed to be a special council meeting. We had to bypass that because that would have meant to be in person, and I'm sure a lot of you wouldn't have been able to attend. So we made a committee meeting so we could have a video conferencing. We're going to have to do more of that because we are no longer going to have council meetings that are using video conferencing technology. We'll be able to stream it, but we won't be able to do video conferencing. That is going to impact our advocacy efforts. So we need parents to be more proactive and work with us as we figure out, ways how we are going to correspond going forward. Whether we're going to be doing more committee meetings, that might have to, that might be the process going forward. But so our first meeting, please, if you can attend in person, we don't have a location, but save the date. It's on July 14th. It's our annual meeting. It'll be also a calendar council meeting where you will be able to speak. But we will find ways to contact parents and to continue with these committee meetings.
And every one of you can advocate, every single one of you. All in the best thing you can do is, again, find people who are in similar situations, talk to people at your school, talk to your parent coordinators. I know it's the summertime and it's difficult, but exchange emails. I mean, there are class lists, especially people who have just graduated. You know, you need to be in touch with one another, and we all need to work together, because again, together, united, we can actually potentially make a difference. But when everyone is working independently and there's not a coordinated effort, that's not good at all. So don't squander this time. Do not squander this time. We have to keep the pressure up. You can't afford to wait a month or 2 months and hope that there's a movement on a waiting list that's probably gonna, your numbers are actually gonna go up. So again, we have to keep the pressure on, see what we can do, constantly engage. And Kelly, we're gonna hold you to the fire. We're gonna, keep on asking for your input and updates, and we want to know what's going on. And I think that that's something we really have to make sure the community gets a response.
I'd also like to say that in a letter from Marisol Rosales, who, for those of you who don't know, she's the executive superintendent for Manhattan for the whole borough. And so she actually oversees, she's Kelly's boss, but in addition to being Kelly's boss, she's the boss of the various high school superintendents in the district. She is responsible for everything in the borough. So she really is the person who should be hearing from parents tonight. I think it's very important to reach out to her.
And I'm going to put her email. I'm going to put her email response when we asked her to attend is in the chat now. And I'm also going to put her email address. So please feel free to reach out to her.
Right. So, and then Kelly, before we wrap up, I want to give you a chance to address the parents that you heard from tonight, because I know you got to speak in the beginning, but now you've heard from a lot of different parents. And I want to give you a chance to just openly, an open-ended chance to address parents. But then I also want to ask you, from my perspective, from serving on the CEC for the last 2 terms and having been a school leadership team member at both an elementary school for many terms and a middle school in District 2, what's really, really frustrating is getting the right people in the room. And what I'd like to, on behalf of District 2 parents, I'd like to ask for your help in getting the high school superintendents and the other voices, the other DOE folks in the room, so that they can, because they tend to, what I have experienced is Vivian Orland being responsive to parents who are in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, but those aren't the parents who are going through the process of getting into high school. And there's a real disconnect there. And I think one of the things that you can do most effectively on behalf of middle school families and elementary school families is help bridge the divide between that artificial distinction between leadership at the high school level and leadership in the K-8 level, because the folks who are in charge of making decisions about high schools really need to hear from middle school families, and we could use your help in that area. But I wanted to let you can talk about that, or you can talk about anything else.
No, thanks. Yeah, no,
I just wanted to interrupt for 1 second. I apologize, but Marisol Rosales did, our executive superintendent, she did state that she would be at our July 14th meeting. So it's out there. It's in her email. Thank you.
Yeah, and I do just want to say that I mean, two things that I think are most important is that I do want to say that both the District 2 staff and the central office staff, including the enrollment team, is here to work on behalf of the families that have spoken tonight. And I also want to say that, in preparation for this meeting, I met with Vivian Orland and Marisol Rosales and members of the enrollment team. And I understand the responsibility that I have to the District 2 community. That's why I'm in this position, and that's why I'm here. And I certainly am hearing the messages and voices that are shared by families. And I just want to reiterate that while well, before I do that, I do just appreciate, I know Jung Min spoke earlier, and I do just appreciate her decision to have her son attend a school that was not on her list, because she, you know, it sounds like she sees some potential and understands that this could be an experience that would benefit her and her son. She's making the decision to send him there. And I think that, you know, over these next couple of months, if there are opportunities for people to visit schools that may not have been on their list, I think that it would be important to do that. That's not to say that, you know, you ultimately will end up in having your child attend one of those schools, but I do just think it's important because were some things that were shared this evening that I think are, you know, there are some factual things that are true, right? Like a lot of high schools did make the decision, which through a process that took many, many years, frankly, to increase the number of students that receive free or reduced lunch at the school, or to open the school up to a broader population of kids. And so I recognize that that certainly will have an impact on the number of seats that are available to District 2 families. But I think it's important to try to engage with the high schools and understand a little bit more about what is happening there. And I think that, you know, when I've had the chance to do that over the past month or so, I have really appreciated what I've heard from some of the high school principals and their commitment to wanting to work with families. And I think that ultimately we will, you know, see this play out. And Maud, I agree that part of the process here has to be one that is long-term, and that, you know, we can't just leave things as they are. And, you know, I may be the superintendent of just the pre-K through 8 schools and kids, other than Clinton High School. But I do see it as my responsibility to continue to engage with the high school leadership, with the central leadership, because I do think that, you know, the uncertainty that came this year is something that, you know, we need to work on. And so I appreciate your inviting me, and I know we'll continue to work on this, and I'll get to work with you know, both Len and Ben, as well as the new CEC coming in, and I appreciate folks who highlighted some of the overlap, I think, that and opportunities for doing more work in the district. I think that, you know, several folks raised some really good ideas, and I appreciate that. And they are definitely being heard. So thanks very much, everybody. And
Kelly, can you at least plan for an update on admissions for the July 14th meeting for us, so we can have something to report back to parents?
Yeah, you had asked about the 92%, and, you know, that 92%, as was shared by the Office of Enrollment, was 92% of families that completed, that listed 12 schools on their high school application received one of them. And you had asked Len how many students were represented by that remaining 8%. And I think that and other questions that were raised are really good ones. And so we'll make sure to get that for the.
And we have one of our new members who you're going to work with has his hand raised. Has his hand raised for a while. Kush, you want to go ahead with your question before we break?
Yeah, I just wanted to you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I just wanted to say again, Kelly, thank you for taking our concerns to the other superintendents. But I do, again, want to express my disappointment for the high school superintendent not being here, the executive superintendent not being here, and the chancellor. And to speak in words that I think they're used to hearing, I'd like to elevate some of the voices of the parents that attended here, but are probably too shy to speak in such a forum. I know I ran for CEC on this platform that I would amplify these voices. And I'd like to just read some of the comments that flew by that I caught. I agree that when parents tell their kids, get good grades and you'll get into a good school, and for them to not get anything on their list with high grades, it's such a blow to their confidence and self-esteem. It also just doesn't make sense, nor is it logical. I'd personally add, it's also not equitable, doesn't empower any ethnic group, and is a sham. On top of that, another parent says, this is not a wait list, it's a fraud. Another parent says, the DOE is fast-tracking mediocrity. +1 for Kelly to discuss why there's a removal of accelerated classes. How does this benefit FRL kids who need acceleration too? Maybe you could explain what work on behalf of means. I'm not being snarky. I really want to know what you can do on behalf of all families now. I don't understand if AP is going to be eliminated, what this program is going to be replaced by. These are just some of the comments that flew by that I caught, that touched me. And again, the DOE decision makers really need to hear this. They cannot be cowards and hide.
I'm gonna, thanks for catching some of those comments, Kush, and reading those. You know, it's hard when you're listening to people to go back and forth between the chat, but people did put some really good things in the chat. So thank you for doing that, Kush. Ben, I want some folks who missed the beginning of the meeting or who joined late are asking about when they're gonna or where they're gonna see the recording. Ben can correct me if I'm wrong, or just tell folks that it'll be on the CEC D2 YouTube page.
Yes, that's correct. It will be on the CEC D2 YouTube page. And what I will do, which we haven't done well, just occasionally, I will put it also the link on our website next to right above the announcement for this meeting. So there'll be a direct link to our video. Hopefully we'll have that in a day or two. I also want to mention we have a CCHS council member here and who will be on the next council, Ted Leather. He's been answering people's questions on our chat. In case he wants to speak up, say anything that he might have heard from the CCHS, please do. But it's, you know, we'll have the video.
But if you want to introduce yourself, that council is a council. Folks might not know too much about the citywide council on high schools. Ted, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, I can. Hi, we have a whole new slate of people that kick in at midnight, which is just to say it's a good thing is an understatement. It's like me in a roller coaster. There's not much that I can say because I've heard. So just hi. Other than that, I've had tons of parents emailing me in districts 1, 2, 3. I've been asked about schools from District 15 parents. I've heard from principals in districts 2, 3, and 15. You know, one of the things that we forget is that when parents say, well, we're going to move to the suburbs, when you move to the suburbs, and this is by no means a hard rule, suburb kids are more likely, and I'm talking about New York suburbs, to go to a SUNY. In New York City, the kids are going to CUNYs. 58%, 57% before COVID of students in New York City public schools went to CUNY. And, you know, I don't want to go into bore everybody with statistics, but I'm really, really heartbroken for a lot of parents and their kids. I'm sorry. There, you know, it's cold comfort to say that there are good schools out there that you didn't hear about. Your kid may very well not have been matched with one. Maud has my email. That's it. But CCHS will be here for you.
Ted, thank you. Ted is someone who has a really good handle on, as I've gotten to know him over the years, a really good handle on some of our statistics. And he, I think, is a really calm voice about focusing on even just talking about where our kids go to college is an important data point for us to consider when we're talking about citywide and borough-wide changes. where kids go to college and how we should be preparing college-bound kids in the high school years is sort of the conversation we need to be having as we talk about how to fix what's gone wrong this year and how to look forward to what the DOE should be doing and what we parents should be advocating for to get the DOE to be focusing on. I see, Len, you had mentioned that we had some folks from elected office here. I think we have Gail Brewer's education person on, Gail Brewer, who's going from our our Manhattan Borough president back to her prior city council seat. Sean, I don't know if you want to say anything in terms of what information you'll be bringing back to Manhattan, our outgoing Manhattan Borough President, Gail Brewer. But if you wanted to add something, you're certainly welcome to.
Thank you, Maud. Not a ton to add at the moment. I have touched base with a lot of the parents in this space one-on-one and communicated with them that Borough President Brewer does have plans to meet with the DOE. There was one on the calendar previously. There was a meeting on the calendar previously that got postponed. So we're looking forward to engaging in that conversation and elevating a lot of the stories that were kind of put forth in this space, as well as just kind of some bird's eye stats that both community boards 1 and 2 have kind of put together and kind of working with them. I'm not sure if too many people in this space have seen the letter they wrote on this issue. So they've been on it. So our office has kind of been collaborating with them around some solutions to this, and hoping to bring that, as well as a lot of your stories, to the DOE when that meeting does happen. So stay tuned, and whenever that meeting does happen, I will follow up with the individual parents that I was engaged with, as well as, I'm at the CEC meeting that happens throughout the year. So I can provide an update in that space as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Yes, it's a daunting task for parents who are going through something that's stressful, but for the time being able to keep the pressure on and talk to as many different elected officials and DOE officials as you can is actually probably, it is helpful for your own individual situation, and collectively it's helpful to raise the fact that what happened this year is not successful, because the more individual parents who reach out, the more it bangs the drum about the fact that we need to make long-term changes. So please do it. Please reach out again and again until you get the answers that you're looking for. So
thank you for coming tonight. If we don't speak up, we don't count, we don't matter. And we have to advocate for our kids.
Absolutely. And I'll just say in a closing note, I've served on the CEC2 now. It's funny that we're having this last CEC2 meeting on June 30th because it's the close of 4 years, which seems much, much longer, if I'm truthful with you, than 4 years. But there have been some really wonderful moments of working with my fellow council members and of hearing from parents and collaborating with parents. Someone said they felt like they were on a roller coaster. I certainly had a roller coaster ride on CEC D2, but I'm deeply grateful to all of the parents who speak up and all of my fellow council members, and I'm very excited for the incoming council. And I see right in the middle of my screen is Jennifer Greenblatt. Jennifer Greenblatt is just an amazing and wonderful advocate for the families of District 2. So Kelly, I wish you the best going forward, and I wish everyone else the best.
And Maud, thank you, Maud.
I will be there as a parent. I will be there rooting and cheering as a parent for the changes that we need to see. With that, if no one has anything further, I'll say good night to everybody.
And emails were posted in the chat. So if anyone wants to look at some of our emails, you can reach us anytime. So, and thank you all for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.